Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. Hello, today on the podcast, I speak with Hugo Fry. Hugo is the managing director and the country chair of Sanofi, the pharmaceutical giant in the UK and Ireland. He's also been a client of mine on a number of occasions, and I know for a fact that he is an ambitious, visionary, and highly successful leader. Today, what we're going to get into is really understanding the journey of how Hugo was able to repeatedly identify incredibly promising and disruptive career opportunities and was able to seize those and multiply his impact as a result. We also get into his technique, which I call prove, celebrate, and scale, that he's been able to use repeatedly to create behavior change and cultural transformation in his different organizations. And finally, we look at the question of speed, how when you're a leader and you want to go fast and you're visionary and you want to go at 100 miles an hour, how do you slow it down enough to bring the people with you? So sit back and enjoy this conversation that I have with Hugo Fry. Hello, Hugo.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, hey, thanks for joining me today. It's great to have you.
No, pleasure to do it. Always like our discussions, so why not record it and share them?
Well, exactly. So yeah, this is great because we've worked together. Obviously over several years now. We've done several bits of work together with you individually and with your team. So it's great just to perhaps step back and on the podcast reflect a little bit, step back and reflect about what's that journey been like for you and where's it going. As you know, this is a series around, I call it CEO Success Formulae. So I'm really trying to dive into high performers, people who are running businesses, and see what's it been that's made them successful. And there's always another level. So that's the second part of the equation. It's like, where do you go once you're there, right? Once you've run you're running a huge business with Sanofi. So before we get into that, do you want to just give us a quick, for those of us who don't know you, a 1 or 2 minute elevator pitch about what's been your, what's your kind of your bio, what have been the steps in the journey to get to where you are now as MD of Sanofi in the UK?
Yeah, so I am a 27-year product of the life sciences and pharmaceutical industry, but I've been lucky enough to do some of the most diverse roles. I've worked across commercial operations, strategic positions, research and development, manufacturing. I've worked all around Europe, in France, in the UK, in Germany. I've worked in Russia, in emerging markets. I've worked in the US and traveled around the world. So the breadth that this industry is able to give me has really kept me stimulated over all that time. And I find it very exciting. The other bit is being at the cutting edge. I've always been in companies that have tried to innovate or in positions at the innovation end of things. And I find that very exciting, very stimulating. And at the end of the day, I've always gone into this industry. And when I first came, and it's still true now, that innovation goes to help people's lives, populations through mass vaccination or rare diseases and patients with chronic conditions. And that still excites me today, and as it did 27 years ago when I came into the industry.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I remember, as we've talked in the past, looking at parts of this story when you've been, running joint ventures, a lot of moving parts and a lot of things to build from nothing in some cases, and other times taking on existing franchises and kind of scaling them up. And I've definitely see that kind of pioneering, let's take new ground kind of spirit in you, right? I think you enjoy that.
Very much
dynamic.
so. So I remember quite early on in my career, I was asked to go from the stable environment of the UK to emerging Eastern European markets. So in the late 90s, we're talking Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, the Baltic states, countries like that. And that really excited me. And I've been excited by those new kinds of challenges. Remember when I was in the Baltic states, took over, there was a handful maximum of people. By the time I left, there was 50 people, and the company I was working for had moved in Latvia to the number 2 pharmaceutical company in that market. And that pioneering stuff where I was literally taking the registration files for new products by hand down to the office myself.
Yeah.
It was really exciting. And I think that kind of marked me going forward. And so I've always sought out positions and done well in positions where, there's a bit of disruption required. There's a bit of crisis management, a bit of transformation, rather than steady the ship and keep it going. I'm more on the disruptive end of things and the transformational end of things.
Yeah, so we're getting into this question about success factors, right? And so what I'm picking up is this is perhaps one of the secret sauce for you, which is searching out those opportunities where there are many pieces up in the air, if you like, and opportunities. It's not a steady state. What are the other kind of factors you would say that you've kind of come back to in creating the impact that you've had?
I think one of the ones I always come back to is a sense of purpose and shared objectives. I think if people understand why they're doing something, they're more likely to do it, and you can unlock their potential, and then they can just go for it, because you either employ talent with potential, or even if you employ the finished article, if you give those people enough development or enough vision and objectives, that they'll get on and do it. And obviously you manage people with talent and potential slightly different to the finished article, but if all those people have a shared vision and shared objectives, I think you're going to get there. And that's the one that's I always find myself coming back to. Do we have this shared set of objectives? Are we working at cross purposes? Are we aligned enough in terms of what we're trying to achieve? Or is that different? And I keep coming back to that one. And often if things aren't going quite right, I see that actually, no, the objectives aren't quite in line. They're not quite together.
Yeah, that reminds me of that question about alignment. I think sounds around a vision. It reminds me. I did a presentation. I talked about, often we talk about we need strategy and execution, but actually we probably need more of alignment and leadership. Because you can have the strategy, but actually if people aren't aligned, if they don't even understand it or know it or really get it, then it's very hard to kind of move people forward and execute. So yes, I love that. So you've got this kind of disruptive, transformational, like finding these opportunities where there is kind of opportunity, and then you've got this kind of vision and understanding that you'd bring. Is this another factor that you'd add into that mix of
Yeah, I think examples are great. So you find examples in your organization, be it, often we talk about doing pilots, and if the pilots work, leap on it, go for it. But throughout, find stories of success and build on success. I often find people spend too much time beating themselves up over something that didn't go right, or even in your own personal development, looking to kind of try and correct something that maybe is a blind spot or weakness, but actually find building on success so successful. So finding something that's going right, celebrating it, doing more of it, finding a strength in your organization or your products or what you're trying to achieve, and unlocking that for a broader spectrum of things.
Is an example of when you've done that, when you're able to really find something that was embryonic or was an example, and being able to kind of really celebrate and create that as a model for others?
Yeah, our industry in kind of the coming out of the 90s. Before that, it was a bit of an arms race. And, you'd have massive sales forces going out there, and I've got bigger sales force than you, and it was real numbers, send them over the top sort of stuff.
Okay.
And I think then we started getting more sophisticated about targeting organizations, about individuals, about segmenting them. And I remember that we were building something around behavioral segmentation, understanding, tailoring messages and products and things to specific behavioral traits of potential customers. And that really worked. And I found a group in the organization. It was in the diabetes arm of our organization, who really embraced this. And there were a lot of skeptics around that at the time, saying, still looking at what's our share of voice and things like that. And we managed to build a model and measure it around the success, absolute intrinsic success, about when we took our control group versus those that were properly segmented by behavior, and adapting our messages and the way we talk to those. And the difference in success was paramount. And then we could go around showing people and say, look at what success. And then, of course, everybody wanted to adopt it. And then that moved the needle quite a lot. And it's quite exciting.
Yeah, no, it's really nice. So you're actually doing it on a small scale, but getting the data to actually prove it out. What's been the so obviously, when we have have out these set of gifts that we use and these set of strategies, there's often the dark side that comes along with it, right? There's often something we have to overcome in our own leadership style, perhaps, to really get the best out of the people around us. What have you, what's your story been on that? Where have you found you've had to make, do some learning on the journey in particular?
I think that the learning comes from when you've done a broad set of jobs, like I have in multicultures and things like that. Sometimes, you can jump ahead and see a solution, see the pathway there. And the great danger when you see that, or you do that, is that you forget that not everyone sees that pathway and that way forward. And you don't spend enough time plotting that pathway forward with the team, because it's absolutely worthless if you're charging on ahead on your own, and the team and people aren't coming with you. So actually, I think if I was to summarize that, sometimes going a little bit slower is faster.
Hello, it's Richard here with a quick interlude. These conversations are all about upgrading how you think about creating impact. So here's a resource to help you do just that, whilst staying fast and focused. The CEO's Checklist for Challenging Times is a quick way to enhance your thinking and detect blind spots, even when things are moving incredibly fast and you're not sure what's going to happen next. You can get this powerful checklist of 17 world-class strategies by heading to xquadrant.com/go/challenging times checklist, with a hyphen between each of those three last words. Now, back to the conversation. Yeah, exactly. And it's such a hard one. You remember in some of the workshops we've done, with your team, we've talked about this. It's like those of us who want to go at 100 miles an hour, those who want to go at 30 miles an hour, and probably you can go at 50, which is feels terribly slow for those of us who want to go at 100. But for those who want to go at 30, because they really want to make sure everything's in place, we're not going to screw up, we're not going to, trip over things, burn through resources, harm people. For them, it feels almost like totally out of control. And it's that dynamic often, which, I think organizations really struggle with, right? Because the leaders who see it, they're like, I know where we need to go, but they're probably missing some things as well that the other people are going to spot along the journey. So it's trying to find that.
That understanding of what I'm comfortable with can make other people feel uncomfortable because they're right on the edge or whatever. And there's no particular reason. That doesn't mean it's wrong or right or things. No. It's just the way it is because they see things, and you just have to be aware of that. And and I still have to check myself. I don't get it right all the time, every day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, well, I'm laughing because I see that in myself as well, right? And it's just that balance, right, between you can, when you kind of see the main strategic thrusts, then the visionaries have got their coats on and they're ready to go out the door. The people who are seeing the operational obstacles, need more time. And say it's not a bad thing; it's a good thing because you're getting that extra perspective. But yeah, that can be. It's. I think you never quite break that. You never quite leave that behind. You're always having to think about it and thinking, what's my speed? What's my pace around this? Let's kind of jump into talking about. Let's talk about habits, and as you know, one of the impact multipliers that I often speak about is mastering transformation, right? Which is basically that that when you come up with a new goal, a new ambition, there's normally a shift in habits and disciplines that either you need to take on board or your team or your organization needs to do, right? Where the daily life starts to change in some way. We can talk about that either from the lens of personal habits, what you found have kind of contributed to your success, or we can talk about building new habits in you or in your team. I'm just kind of what comes to mind when I talk about this question of habit formation and transformation.
Yeah. So I think it comes back down to finding what works. If you can find what works and demonstrates it in transformation, then people will have more confidence doing it and then enter into the habit of doing it. Until there's proof, you won't get most people coming with you.
Yeah.
You have to plot that out, and anyone who's done way more change management than I have will understand the theory behind it better than I do. But when I think about absolutely finding the proof points of success and then taking that forward with a wider organization and then create the habits around doing that, and that could be in anything. I think we've learned good habits, albeit forced upon us by the pandemic. One of the great habits I've now learned is more regular, broader communication, which explains, which makes you say, right, why aren't we going into the office? What other methods are we using to communicate? What other tools are we adopting? And the level of engagement is really, really high when you do that. And we were getting 800-900 people on our regular calls, direct with everyone in the organization, whereas on a normal, even quarterly town hall, we'd maybe get 400-500. And so the level of engagement was much higher, but and it didn't wane. And so you find yourself explaining. So that value in transformation of taking through it, regular communication, doing lots of Q&As. And I think to myself, actually, why haven't I been doing that before? Why did it take this pandemic and this massive transformation forced upon us to do that? And it is really a real learning.
Well, what I'm hearing there's like also this immediate positive feedback loop in that example, right? So you do this town hall because you think, what are we going to do? And then suddenly everyone turns up and everyone's hugely engaged and you go, wow, that was worth doing. I'm going to do it again. And I think no matter what the habits are, trying to find, what is that immediate satisfaction. Now, obviously, some habits are harder to spot that, right? Because you're building for a long-term result, in which case, obviously, the proof points help. You kind of feel good about it. But I think it's really also important, whatever it is to even if it's just that you give yourself a mini fist pump at the end of it, at the end of doing something that is important. Like, I've done my, 10 sales calls for the day or whatever. It's like you've got to actually celebrate that moment. but I think the what you're saying as well is that it's when you identify things which obviously are working, then it's a great mechanism, like the town hall. That's really simple, well, not simple, but um, it becomes very easy to do more of that, right?
Yeah.
Because you're getting the bonus.
And then if you think of other things, digital transformation. So our industry is going through a big digital
Mm.
transformation that, again, the pandemic has accelerated, which I'm sure is the case for many other industries as well.
Yeah, all over.
But we have lots of people out in the field, be it for medical and scientific reasons, be it for clinical studies, be it for sales calls and other reasons, who spend a lot of time face to face with customers. Now, obviously,
Mm.
that stopped
Mm.
in most cases with a few respites. But we've transformed into digital ways of interacting with our customers. And very quickly, we've been able to demonstrate the value of that and some real success stories. And
Mm.
then sharing those success stories across the organization means adoption has been that much quicker.
Mm.
And that's a transformation in itself. And again, it comes back to this idea of finding a group or an individual or an area of success,
Yeah.
demonstrating that success, sharing it across the organization so that the adoption can be there. And then
Yeah,
nothing
it's really
breaches
this.
that.
It's really like yeah, it's this. It's really fascinating. It's story, it's story led. It's telling the stories of success, which are then going to create a culture change or a habit change
Yeah.
on a wider scale. And especially if you can even prove it. I guess you can't always prove it, right? But trying to at least get that picture in people's minds. Well, this group did it. This is what they got.
Mm.
Positive stuff. I want some of that.
We had a really good organic example in our organization where we had a complex project that we wanted to implement. So we trained up a few people in lean and agile techniques to help implement that project. So, with Scrum Masters and all the rest of it. And it was a real success, and those people loved it. And other people saw that and they said, well, can we be trained in that as well? And organically, they started implementing the training, and we got yellow belts and carrying on through the
Mm.
belts and some real experts, and we were able to train ourselves then. And we've ended up with 50, 60 people in the organization, and most of our projects throughout the
Mm.
organization without any top-down request or anything, and
Mm.
now run using agile and lean techniques.
Mm. Yeah, great. So I think this is a really interesting angle. So thanks so much for bringing this up. This is going to stay with me. I think this idea of selling the success in order to really scale new ways of working at whatever level. I think that's a really fascinating angle. Let's move forward and let's think about the future because no matter where we get to, right? And I know Sanofi in the UK and Ireland is is a big organization. You've done a lot with it, and you had this 20 however many years it was of of life science and pharma background and all the different stories. I'm wondering kind of what's your next level as a leader, right? So like how would you love to multiply your own impact in the coming months or years? What excites you when you're looking at the future?
So I have to say, as I said earlier, that I get excited by change, by transformation, by disruption. I think that's interesting, and there's no doubt there's some really exciting innovation coming down the pipeline. And because that meeting with the UK government at the moment, they've put life sciences at at the heart of their own transformation post Brexit.
Hmm.
I think that's really exciting. That's getting exciting. So the idea of a post Brexit transformation which will allow innovation to come into the country and innovative products to be used to treat patients. I think that is really exciting. So I'd like to hope that I could use my leadership, one, to work in partnership with government institutions and the government itself and bring the organization together to help that happen. I think that's it. And I have to say I get very stimulated by that external engagement when the organization I'm working for has something that will help support the priorities of, in this case, a government and the institutions.
Yeah, well, I remember from what we've looked at, and also your own, you're representing Sanofi for Brexit and all these things. This whole area of stakeholder engagement, right? I mean, I guess if I can say, the work we did with the team recently, where there was this real shift, I think, in self-understanding of the team, that actually, one of your leadership teams is, has traditionally been seeing themselves as the operational, driving force of the business unit. Whereas actually there was a shift that happened, and actually perhaps our identity is more of an influencing, we're the influencing body, and we can push operations down a level a little bit and actually focus on managing this complex stakeholder world.
Yeah, I think that was a really important shift. That time, it was in December, wasn't it, where we had that conversation, and I think there was a real light bulb moment for us where our conversation shifted to that being, oh yeah, that really is the most important thing. This external engagement, understanding that, mapping out that environment and influencing that environment will be the make or break thing that this team does.
Yeah, it was fascinating, because it was like, for me, it was like a perfect team coaching moment, right? Because when you're coaching individuals, they get get the idea of what a light bulb moment is, but it's really interesting to see it on the team level, because there really was a session of, actually our future is really tied in with all these stakeholders, and that's where we need to be spending our time. So that was fascinating. So I think we're probably we've pretty covered what we needed to cover today, Hugo. So thanks so much. It's been a great discussion. I enjoy working with you, but I think just stepping back and looking at some of these success formula, especially this one around isolating success and promoting it and scaling it, I think that's been a really helpful insight. So thank you so much.
No, thanks, Richard. I've really enjoyed it.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that? Where should they look you up?
LinkedIn is the best. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so they can message me through LinkedIn, no problem at all.
Okay, perfect. Well, hey, Hugo, many thanks, and speak soon, no doubt.
Yeah, thanks, Richard.
Cheers, bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at xquadrant.com.